From bar top-notcher to a dictator, tonight on Malacañang Untold, we trace the arc of one of Southeast Asia's most complex and controversial leaders.
He promised an Ilocano president in 20 years, and he got 20 years of presidency. But was it all just a grand illusion? Let's unpack the man, the myth, and the million shoes. So let's start the setting in Maarat, Ilocos Norte, 1917, where a political prodigy was born.
He was a brilliant lawyer, one of the top 10 passers of the bar exam. But even back then, there was a shadow. If you guys ever heard about the 1935 assassination of Julio Nalundasan, Marcos was convicted of murder. He appealed to the Supreme Court, and yet he won.
Wait, so you're telling me that literally got away with murder to start his career? Essentially, his career was already stained with blood.
That's correct, and he learned the lesson that the law bends if you have the power. Then came the war. He claims to have led ang mga Maharlika, which is a super guerrilla force.
But the US archives say otherwise. I heard that it was just a strategy of Marcos Sr. to gain sympathy from the masses.
I actually researched this myself and it was definitely exaggerated. Fabricated even. This is where the war hero myth starts. He basically used that lie to be able to jump from tech assistant to congressman.
Fast forward, he plays chess with Diosdado Macapagal. He managed Macapagal's campaign in 1961. He exchanged for a clear path to the presidency in 1965.
But Marcos broke the deal. He defects to the Nacionalistas, and he brings in his secret weapon, his wife, Imelda.
Imelda was the Rose of Tacloban. She basically ran that 1965 campaign like a military operation. It was lavish, it was expensive, and it was in Hollywood style, just like her luxury-obsessed lifestyle.
Yeah, I noticed this. She seems very similar to Marie Antoinette, especially with the way she seems to ignore the hunger and poverty of her country.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
And yeah, of course, Marcos wins the election. And initially, he does build the NLEX, the San Juanico Bridge, and the Cultural Center for the Philippines. But let's look at the fine print. The commissioner of the San Juanico Bridge admitted that Marcos actually took a 50% bribe from a Japanese firm to build a bridge that nobody really demanded for.
So how about the theft? It is $600 million to $1 billion in just 4 years. He was borrowing to build and building to bribe.
1969, the 3Gs election. Guns, goons, and gold.
$50 million spent on one campaign. That is actually insane if you think about it for 1969.
Right? I can't imagine how much money that would be now. What did they even do with that much money?
It was theft, but the youth saw it. Enter the first quarter storm. Students marching on Menjola. The Battle of Menjola. The death of Enrique Santra Bigida.
Who was tortured to death by police. This is where the regime starts to bleed.
A break was honestly non-existent during his term because if you think about it, during 1971, the Plaza Miranda bombing also happened. Marcos primarily blames the communists, he suspends the habeas corpus, and eventually he sets the table for the very main course, the infamous martial law. So, in September 23, 1972, the Proclamation 1081 actually happened, and this was to save the Republic from communism.
From communism, more like to save his own skin. He even shut down the Congress, arrested Ninoy Aquino, muscled the press, and especially student journalists.
Guys, okay, let's get a grip for a second. Can you believe that it was recorded that there were 3,257 extrajudicial killings? 35,000 was tortured, then 70,000 was imprisoned.
And while all of this was happening, Imelda was building the Manila Film Center, where workers fell into wet cement and died. And the cherry on top is that while all of this was also occurring, Imelda was shopping for shoes in New York.
Basically, the steel butterfly was running the Iron Hawk dictatorship. It really wasn't about corruption at this point. It was brutality dressed in Armani.
So, tracking back a bit, in 1983, Ninoy Aquino returns and bam, he was assassinated on the tarmac. Marcos thought that this would essentially silence the opposition, but of course we see that this was the spark that lit the dynamite.
Then after that, the economy crashed. The peso went from 3.90 to 20.46 against the dollar. The Bataan nuclear plant, well, built but never used. It is a monument to corruption.
And then, the 1986 snap election happened. Once again, Marcos cheated.
But honestly, he really thought he was slick. Because at this time, the people already had a VCR. They saw through his fraud, and on February 22, 2 million people took to EDSA.
Praying, not fighting. Rosaries against tanks. That is the irony. The man who built the military as his shield was brought down by nuns and civilians.
Then he flees to Hawaii, then died in 1989. But the body? The body came home.
In 2016, Duterte's administration, they somehow allowed the burial of Ferdinand Marcos at Tilibingan ng mga bayani. This was basically the cemetery of heroes. And honestly, though I wasn't present during this timeline, the title, The Hero, deeply disturbs me.
A hero? He was a convicted thief in court and a human rights violator. The Supreme Court allowed it, but the victims' families were gutted.
This is the paradox, guys. You drive on NLEX, you go to the Heart Center, you watch a concert at the CCP, and the Marcoses built all of this. But he also destroyed democracy to do it.
But the question isn't, did he build roads? The question is, was the price in blood worth the asphalt?
And with that, this is Rihanna, Giselle, and Maarat.
Followed by Kenshi Torres.
And MJ de la Cruz.
Of course, I'm also here, Nikita Bungalos.
And lastly, I'm Jody Shehata.
Stay informed, Philippines. This is Malacañang Untold. Over and out.